To me, it really reminds me of Magritte, the surrealist Magritte. Yeah, because he used very common domestic objects and scenarios and gave them a slight twist. I mean, if you think about Dali and then you think about Magritte, Magritte is like domesticated surrealism. It's barely surrealism, actually. Dali is so pompous and overboard a lot of the time, and Magritte is very sly and very simple. And this to me reminds me of that kind of very simple intervention with a very common door, and it's not a very fancy door. Other people might have used a more elaborate Rajasthani door or something more ornate or something. But this is also a door which kind of defies cultural specificity.
Martand, you're also an architect and a practicing architect. By education, you're an architect. So naturally, there is a lot of overlap and sourcing, from that space and that world. Just a quick thought on, how sort of that happens. I mean, end of the day, you're one individual sort of wearing two hats. Are you more of an artist? Are you more of an architect? Or is that separation sort of irrelevant?
For me, the binary does not sort of necessarily exist. At the same point, I think that both sides of these practices inform my understanding of my surroundings,
right,
my reality, and I think that's how I approach both the art and the architecture. I think at one level, my architectural practice remains much more singular. It's the act of creation of a single building within a much larger urban landscape.
Context of the
in a context where we're also working against and with a number of other partners and forces and laws, but at the end of it, we are the authors of a building which comes up. The art practice, in a sense, allows for thought that goes beyond. It allows for exploration of terrains within the city that the architectural practice is very short on. So when I'm looking at how our cities are transforming, moving, how the people within it are living, and what relationships the population, the citizens of the city have with the state, I think all of these issues, which are very, very pertinent issues and that need to be thought about and considered for all of us, is a domain where I think my art practice, I'm able to kind of explore these things
and sort of extend that. Talking about use of the material in your practice and your work, right, and the whole aspect around materiality, and what it means. So in some ways, there are two very distinct examples where you've really created a wonderment and a surprise element. I mean, how conscious was the effort to create that dramatics, or just talk about your choice of material for this work and for that matter that work.
So I think with this work, which shares its name with the title of the show, 1:2500, there are three types of wood. There's teak, there is Mirandi, and there is Shisham. And most of the wood has been salvaged from housing that is getting demolished around the city.
Oh, wow.
So I have been buying it over the years, over the months, last couple of years, and it's an attempt. I mean, I don't want to sort of speak too much to the form of it, but the intent is to try and explore new formal typologies that emerge from sort of the remains of older cities. So, in a sense, which is something that you see in a lot of informal housing across India as well, that you kind of actually borrow from all sorts of spaces to kind of create dwellings or boundaries or borders or thresholds. So in a sense, this becomes the starting point of a lot of explorations within this exhibition, is that these are the new old remains of the city, ready to kind of be thought of.
Yeah, I mean, metaphorically and as well as sort of pretty literally. I mean, the way you've used repurposed sort of wood which is being discarded.
So that's very important. I mean, the fact that material truth and also the narrative truth for me is very important. It's something that I am very conscious of, like, so bringing that in and constantly kind of using that.
Peter, just a quick reaction also, and an entry point into 1:2500 as the title of the show.
It's a standard unit of measure in mapping diagrams in architectural practice. So it has this idea of, again, the micro to the macro, that these could be plans for much larger cityscapes,
right.
But they could also perhaps just be, they could be DNA or something like that. So this back and forth between scale change and that sort of thing is how I interpret this.
Of course, the micro and the macro aspect comes in with the doors and the towers, but then there is, this sort of can be clubbed together. But this certainly is a very, very, very different sort of a take on the entire idea that you're sort of dealing with.
There's a very strong link here as well. I think that all the wooden pieces they are laid out differently, but they are essentially the same as that what comprises of the wall that runs outside. But
Yeah, and in the towers, these are contained by things, and in this case, they've gone into vertical slabs and they're painted white. So I think it's another inflection.
Really, as a thought process, they all kind of tie in, and materially also they start to tie in informally. So just kind of they are different configurations of similar ideas.
But I think these are some of my favorite works of the show, and we put them because these do break away from more the architectural sort of concept. I mean, just for this flat. I mean, they reference painting. They reference Malevich and things like that, and they're more like a comment on works in art and this synthesis between painting and sculpture than the things that lead you into thoughts more about architecture or urban planning. And in that way, I find these pieces very, very successful. That you're kind of bringing together this language of minimalism with this chaotic maximalism, and the two. I mean, there's this tension, and it's holding it together, but it's actually a very beautifully balanced tension between the two.